And just think about what they call natives, or, the people that originally inhabited these different lands. They're always referred to as aboriginals. Aboriginals, which is actually a two-part word, ab and original. Ab meaning from, and then of course the word original. So literally, aboriginal means from the original, meaning that we come from the original, whatever that might be. And when you look at it and you see these different mutations in, MC1R and TPC2, and how it's created these two distinct forms of melanin on the planet, and then the immediate division that was formed from this shift in the DNA. It is literally like a human chessboard that was created. And if that is the case, then, the question is, who or what constructed this chessboard, and what was the purpose? Remember, we got the Yakub theory, which is basically this allegorical story that, when you break it down, is ultimately pointing to this thing being deliberately done, that this was not a spontaneous event, and that the human genome was deliberately manipulated, and that the reason that this was done was to make us come face to face with different parts of ourselves, different elements within ourselves that we are meant to discipline and conquer. Basically, our lower nature, the lowest part of ourselves, manifested and given control of the world around us, essentially creating a matrix that we have to learn how to navigate and overcome. Remember, the name Yakub is the Arabic form of the name Jacob, and it means supplanter. So to take over or to overthrow. And it also means to hold by the heel. So literally to hold something back, to basically do everything you can to stop the progression of something. And then in the Bible, you got the story of Jacob and Esau, the two twins that basically it seems like they were born to fight, because even inside their mother's womb, they're going to battle. They're going to war. And then when they're actually born, Esau is the first one to come out of his mother's womb. But even as Esau is coming out, Jacob is still inside his mother's womb, pulling on Esau's leg, trying to stop him from being the firstborn. Because with Esau being the firstborn, he automatically inherits his father's birthright. And even though he can't stop Esau from being born first, Jacob ends up tricking Esau into giving up his birthright later on, even going as far as pretending to be Esau. And then remember what Jacob does with that birthright once he steals it from Esau. He has that dream about a ladder that is set on the earth and reaches up into heaven. And when Jacob saw that ladder set on the earth and reaching up into the heavens, he realized that this is where God is. This was how you get to God, by climbing this ladder. And then not long after that, he comes face to face with God, and he actually ends up wrestling with God, to the point where God actually recognizes Jacob as a formidable opponent. And that's when he changes his name from Jacob to Israel, which literally means he who fights against God. And after that fight with God, Jacob realizes that he has seen God face to face. And he names this place where he sees God and fights God pineal. And for human beings, we know our pineal gland is located in the midline of the brain. We call this the seat of the soul, the third eye, the one physical part of us that, we think could possibly connect us to something outside of this physical plane. So basically you could say the pineal could possibly help us to see God. And then how do you get to God? By climbing Jacob's ladder. And how do you get to the pineal gland? By climbing the ladder of the spine. Those 33 vertebrae that make up the spine, starting at the base and leading all the way up to the brain, where the pineal gland sits. You climb that ladder of the spine, it will reach the pineal gland. And likewise, if you climb Jacob's ladder, you will reach pineal, where you will see God face to face. And remember, Jacob is Yakub in Arabic. And then that name means to hold something back, to do your best to hold something back. Just like in the story, Jacob holds Esau back to try to stop him from progressing. And then when Jacob comes face to face with God, what does he do? He fights against God, to the point where he is literally given the name, he who fights against God. And then remember, God is in pineal. And if you line the chakra systems up with the spine, then climbing up from the root chakra is going to eventually lead you to the pineal gland or the third eye. And then you look at the world around us, the society that has been created around us. And it is literally like everything is pointing us away from our higher self, keeping us away from the pineal, the higher part of us, and keeping us focused on the base, the root, the lowest part of that ladder. Look at it, and it's like a literal fight against God, against our higher minds. And we've talked about this before, but it's like the people that are running the show are literally playing the role of Satan, doing everything to keep us on a low level and to give into the physical, to stay at the bottom of that ladder on the earth and not to climb up to reach God, higher enlightenment. But it's like they were literally put in place and are being used to test us.